Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you so much for coming out to Daily Cyber episode number 277. It's been quite some time. I was looking over my podcast and looking at how many podcasts and streams I've done over the last bit, and getting up to 277. It's a big achievement for me. I'm looking forward to get to that 300 mark. Today's going to be a really exciting one. We're going to talk to a very highly technical person. So hopefully you grab a notepad, a pen, you get keyboard open and notepad open, because we're going to be talking a lot of technical information today. Really excited to have Danny on the stream today. He's a chief technical officer at PolySwarm, where he focuses on advancing how the security community detects, analyzes, and shares information about malware. He holds a Ph.D. in computer science from New Mexico Tech, where he also teaches as a professor. Before joining PolySwarm, Danny worked in research technical roles at Redacted, Bechtel, MIT Lincoln Laboratories, and Los Alamos National Laboratory. He has also spoken at Black Hat, DEF CON, RSA. Danny is passionate about making complex cybersecurity topics such as reverse engineering practical and understandable. So this is going to be a good one. I know one of the questions I keep getting asked is about investigation, after an incident, going through an incident response, looking at what happened, how did it happen, kind of going through that and looking how the malware executed and, how can they prevent that? So these are some of the conversations we're going to go through today. So grab a coffee, grab a tea, and let's hack at it. Good afternoon, Danny. How are you?
Doing great. How are you doing, Brandon?
Not bad. I'm really excited about today's conversation. I know there's a lot we're going to cover, so I'm really excited.
Cool. Yeah, same here. That was a great introduction. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Anything I missed?
No, I think you pretty much got it. So nothing good. So you get high marks so far. So.
There we go. Perfect. Good. I never ever asked anyone how I score on the introduction of introducing people. But the great thing is doing the research, getting the bios of people, you kind of learn how versed they are in technology and security and the environment and different environments they've worked with, like yourself, looking at, your different experience, you being a teacher, like a professor, right? So how to take, like you said, complex, cybersecurity theories, practices, and teach them how to take them to a basic level from introduction to real world situations.
Yeah. It's definitely a process. Yeah. But luckily, the thing that's always been lucky is that you're never teaching people that don't want to learn. That's the difficult thing in any teaching thing. So it's a little bit like soft pitch, especially talking with elementary and high school teachers. It's like the kids want to be here. So it's really good. And it's I don't know, if you've never taught before, it's actually kind of wonderful. And you have, but if your audience hasn't, it's definitely a wonderful way to give back. And, if we all think about it, we were beginners once. Right. Nobody comes out knowing how to do this.
Well, one of the things to your point is, as anyone going through the industry, IT, security, a lot of times you have to do continuing education credits. Excuse me. You have to do continuing education credits. Through that, teaching's one of them. Like if you can do hours of teaching, even community service, kind of going through talks and presentations, it helps that. And I think for me, I've found if I can teach it, then I realize how much I know. And then also the gaps. There's some things where I get stuck where someone asks me a question. I'm like, that's a great question. Send me an email address. Let me get back to you. And then I'm going back and I'm researching, but at least it helps me know what I know and then know what I need to learn.
Yeah, definitely. If you want to actually learn something, teach it. And more importantly, get in front of a bunch of people trying to learn it and or somebody who has marginal understanding of it and let them correct you. That's a great way to do it.
Awesome. No, it's so true.
It's there.
So talking about the area of reverse engineering, how'd you get into that?
That is an excellent question. So a lot of times Like, this is a weird career to be in, and it's a very strange skill set, and it's always been kind of interesting. So I'll tell you the way that I did it, which was not security related, unless you're a video game company. I wanted to play video games, and they had content protection on them that prevented them from doing that. And a lot of times it was like this really nuanced little assembly code that I didn't know at the time. You know, when I started out, I was a teenager just applying patches to things. But, you know, after a while, after, you know, you get a virus or two that way, and you come up with ways to like actually verify and look at this sort of stuff. So that's kind of how I got into it. That was the impetus of it. But really, I've always been interested in the security field, like how you break into things, the psychology of it, how you trick people into, you know, getting things accomplished, and that sort of thing. So I was in the incident response area, so a lot of, you know, looking at network packets and you know, mitigating attacks and responding to them, and that sort of thing. And this is in the dark days, really old, like 20 years ago. But, you know, at the time, there was just no resources for looking at malware. Like, I was interested in it. I wanted to learn. But, like, as far as actually learning it, you know, you could do okay looking at some of the, like, frac or underground materials.
Right.
But it wasn't going to be specifically what you need. It wasn't going to be practical. And there was this, like, huge, like, learning curve there. Now, thankfully, I was working at Los Alamos at the time, and they were, at the time, very enthusiastic about training budgets. And so, like, I got to go through the, you know, the how to reverse engineer at Black Hats, and take a lot of courses that were specialized and that sort of thing. And that really got me going. But, you know, a lot of it was just drive and situationally, like, you know, large 12,000 node network gets infected with a piece of self-spreading malware, which was new at the time.
Right.
How do you get rid of it? Right. One of the current methods was like pick up the phone and start calling network admins in a remote laboratory area that's about the size of Washington, D.C., but that doesn't scale.
Right.
So we kind of had to like level up. And so then we're like, okay, what if we turn off switch ports?
Right.
And then like just drop their internet that stops all the ping storms and that sort of thing. And that turned out to be the way that we got in control of it.
So more like containment, right? Now, people watching this, I mean, you kind of look at an incident response life cycle. Talk someone through that, because I mean, a lot of times, like, and I didn't know this myself, is when you're coming into IT and potentially even security, a lot of times you're not involved in an incident because it's the CERT team, right? The security incident response team, it's the security engineers, it's executives. So until you get that move up in your kind of your career, all of a sudden then you're in that, or if you're an incident response person designated to that, other than that, you're kind of on the side and just told, kind of do this, do that. So kind of walk through that life cycle.
Yeah, I guess there's two major components to it. So I'm going to base a lot of this on my experience and, you know, as an incident responder, and then also managing a large team at Bechtel. But really there's two states. Well, like before you have the security religion, there's always that state, which is where everything's fine. We don't need to pay for all these high dollar security consultants, and geez, we don't need that firewall, whatever, right?
Yep.
It's like,
where do we cut back? Where do we cut back? Right.
Yeah, it's a wonderful state to be in. You don't want to break the fantasy for them and that sort of thing. You want to let them live this part of their life, much like a teenager, just live in innocence for a little bit longer.
Right.
But as we know, the world comes crashing down and people break in. Right. So there's two ways to do it. So in the don't have anything, it's kind of like the quick come to the, I don't want to, you know, quick religion gathering, which is like,
yeah,
okay, we've got to change things really quick right now. How are we going to do it? Well, we're going to pay some high dollar consultants a lot of money, and they're going to come in and give us like speak with very strong authoritative voices and with soothing language, and they're going to tell us how to get out of this, right?
Right.
And that's a possibility, right? And so like what happens is a lot of companies go through that, they go through that whole thing, they get it done, and they're like, finally we can go back to normal. And then you come back, you're a consultant, you know how this goes, and like you keep getting hit by the same things. So the smart companies, what they do is they start to build in this security group, which is an investment. It costs money, but if you look at the cyber insurance cost, the cost of paying Mandiant or now Google, however much they're charging, all that other stuff. It's like, that's a significant portion of your bill, not to mention all these ransoms that you're having to pay.
Right.
So you're like, okay, great. We wanted to be a little bit more proactive in stopping this. And so those are the kind of the teams that I was involved with, is like after they'd already gotten raked over the coals and they're like, okay, we got to stop this and be smart about it. Get going. And so that's always fun. Is that once they get the religion, is getting them actual effective security that they just don't notice, and that allows them to do their business the way that they were doing it before, but with the added confidence of not so much there. But there tends to be phases, right? So once you have one of those groups set up prior to the breach, the way that I always ran mine is that we did training. So we simulated breaches. We would say, like, what happens if somebody gets admin on this portion of the network? And it was always like the awkward thing that nobody patched in 20 years is what we would, we'd do blue teaming, I guess is what it's called now. So, it's like, what is the most awkward thing for us to respond to, and that sort of thing. And so we did a lot of like training like you fight. So I had a frontline SOC responders who are, they answered tickets, they looked at the logs, any alerts from SIMs and that sort of thing. And we would just run break-in events. Like we would pay either people to break into us, or we would do the actual compromise, things that we knew would actually stimulate these things. It was just over and over and over. And then throughout that process, everybody works a 40-hour week. We're not grinding hard. Everybody try to keep everybody fed and happy, so that when an incident does come, we're able to switch on to that emergency mode. And so in the incident emergency mode, it's, you've got an incident commander who is running the entire operation. And then you've got targeted containment, which is like trying to figure out what's going on. Number one is like noticing it. That's always the hard part. And then number two is that once you've noticed it, coming up with a plan about how to fix it. And so that plan right there is usually evolves around like, how'd they get into the first place?
Right.
What's the breach point? And so that's kind of where malware comes in. So a lot of the break-ins that we were dealing with at Los Alamos were, how they get brought in, and executable got ran on a Windows system somehow.
Right.
So it was, okay, well, how do we find out where it was run? Well, you got to put logging in. It's like, okay, well, the operating system doesn't support logging. And like, what do you mean? And it's like, you can't track executables. And so it's like, we had to figure out how to track, get Windows to log what it was executing and stuff like that. And it was just building all of those things up so that when you do have an incident, you have all of those tools to be able to quickly say, here's how they got in, this is the path they take, and how they get around. But
now, one question we had just pop up now: how much pushback did you get from those types of training, the one you talked about before, and specifically with the areas that haven't been touched? So I'm thinking they're talking about like stuff that's not mainstream, like when you talk about like pen testing and, hack the box and things like that. We're kind of their mainstream where they go, okay, OSCP. But how do you go through things like reverse engineering might not be for a company something they think is a common thing. You should go get your Security Plus or CISSP. Like do that versus reverse engineering. No.
Yeah. Well, Security Plus, I will agree with that is a good one. You should go get that one. The CISSP, I've got long-standing beef against that thing, but I'm not against like certifications or anything like that. Far from it. What is really nice about those is that they provide a learning plan, which is a lot of times you don't know what to get into. Like you're first starting out, you don't know whether or not you want to get into like, the log monitoring, event managing, like managing the infrastructure, responding to it, doing forensics. There's just a whole bunch of things, or, God forbid, reverse engineering. So there's a whole bunch of things and you don't know where to go. So like what's really nice about the certificate plans is that they give you like an intro and at least like a way to get your foot in the door.
But for Los Alamos, that was the company you talked about that gave you training. Did you get any pushback?
Like Oh yeah. Well, it was government. So, I mean, a little bit, but like usually what they did is they had budget for training, and a lot of times it wasn't getting used at that point. So this is kind of when SANS was really taking off too. So they'd really like optimize their business model for extraction of dollars from the government. So it was starting to get going there. And then, like inside of it was more like a research like the best way to describe Los Alamos in the 2000s was like an academic research place that also made nuclear weapons, and like the attitudes of both. Right. So you had like the hardline military people, and then you had the open, free spirited academics, and the intersections of those were the entertaining parts.
Yeah.
But so it wasn't unheard of to support those things for like random things, because we were supposed to be pushing the state of the art. Now, like in a company, that's a lot more difficult, right? And so that's where like going to these trainings that cost, like at the time it was like $2-3 grand a pop, plus hotels and all that other stuff, gets to be a lot more expensive. And I think that's the kind of the problem that like a lot of these legacy training organizations are having, is that they're just too expensive.
Right.
Like SANS is just very, very good content. You pay for great content and a really great way to learn and that sort of thing. But like in 2025, there's other options now.
Right. So, and I think to help to kind of answer that question, if you're getting pushback on training, look at writing a business case, right? In the sense of not just how the training is going to benefit you, but how is it going to benefit the organization, right? Is it going to reduce costs? Is it going to reduce liability? Is it going to save them in other areas? If you can write a business case like that, and there's lots of people you can ask to review it, that will help to at least proposition that education towards the business, that it's going to be beneficial. I think a lot of times when people make mistakes, and I did this when I started my career, it's all about me. I want to get my MCSE. I want to do this, but why? Because I want it, and I want it for my career, and I want to learn more. But why? How is it going to help the company? Oh, you matter? You don't matter. You just give me the money for training, don't you? No, you need to say how it's important for the organization. I remember a manager, there was a VP that I reported to at that time, goes, I appreciate what you're thinking, but remember, it's our dollars that are going to pay for your training. So you have to make sure it benefits me 90%, you 10%. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, okay. So give me that 90% in a business case that's going to be 90% beneficial for me, where I'm going to see all the bells, the whistles, and everything that I'm going to benefit from having you take this training. And then you can walk away with a certification, whatever. And that's great for you, but I need that 90%. And I go, is that, and I asked him like straight out, is that common? Like, is that something I'm going to have to do kind of for my career? He goes, as you go up in your career and you're asking for more certifications, especially ones that are not industry standard, that's not part of your job description, you're going to have to do that more and be very articulate on how it's going to benefit, because some of them you're going to have to massage a little bit because it's not as clear cut. You have firewalls. You got to take a firewall training because you want to be better at maintaining and managing the firewall, so they're configured properly, they're secure, they're hard, you have redundancies, you understand the topology. That makes sense. But if you're talking about, and I'll use AI, if you don't use AI, you want to go on AI training, how's that help us as a company, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think certainly justifying it from that angle is primarily what people are looking at. But it's super important for people, like, mm-hmm. to get that training. Like it's super meaningful. And I'm glad you brought that up. Like, as a manager, I've been both on the side where I'm like, hey, I want to go to this exorbitantly expensive thing where they're going to teach me how to look at weird satellite firmware.
Right.
And they're like, no, you don't do satellites here. You're not going to go there. You can't do that. So it was like no justification for that. But then other things that were a little bit more related, it was all about just like you said, bringing it back to the business side. Mm-hmm. As a manager, though, so I'm switching hats.
Yeah.
When knowing how important training was to everybody and how much it mattered if like you were willing to do the investment, I actually built it into the compensation and the benefits type thing. So the idea behind this is that once a year you got to go to a conference or a training, and it had to cost this much. Usually it was some unit of thousands of dollars. But basically from there, after that, you had to come back and teach us what you learned.
Right.
And that's the sort of thing. So what I was trying to do was say, we will pay for you to go to the training. We will get you your certifications because that makes us look better. This is a construction company, but we had marketing to do ourselves. And then also it was just great for employee retention too, because they knew that if they stuck around with me, they were going to learn something and they were going to advance their career. I didn't really necessarily have the jobs for them to move into, but at least they would have the experience there,
Right.
and then move forward. And as far as like, employee perks and benefits and stuff like that, it's not that expensive. It's overall, it's not bad. So my big advice for managers is, help your people out to make those justifications and to do that, because then you get to this weird situation where they start fighting for you, like your employees are helping out.
Now I got a question for you. Another one that's popped up. What's the best way to get looked at for a position with Bachelor of Science and multiple certifications?
As far as like getting into the job,
I think the question really comes down to, and I think you've seen this a lot of times, you get a lot of education, you go and you cert dump, right? Security Plus, OCSP, you get all these certifications, but now you're applying for jobs and you're one of 1,000 resumes, right, that are part of this pool that's getting submitted for one job, one posting. And I think the question comes down, that correct me wrong, is how do you get noticed? How do you break through that?
That game is flawed from the beginning, my friend. No, so that's a very good one. And, I was recently in a job search and it's definitely there. I can tell you I've got exactly 0 jobs from just like blind applying like that and like trying to get through filters. And this like even in the pre-AI days, getting some person to notice that from a stack of 1,000 applicants, it's just maddening. And they have to take shortcuts and that sort of thing. So a lot of times it was a game of like, what are the shortcuts that HR are taking to filter through these resumes? And so that's, keywords were a big one of them. But I really feel like that's like trying to circumvent like the actual thing. What you need to do if you want to get through to those jobs is have a relationship with the hiring manager. And you have to network. And there's no other way to get around it. And especially as you get later in your career, like early in the career, people are willing to give you like the benefit of the doubt. It's like, oh, you're new and you just got out of school. You got a bunch of certifications and that sort of thing. When you get older, you're sort of expected to have experience and be able to do that. So like cold applying and that sort of thing is not going to be the best thing. For new people getting past that, it's like networking events are the big one. So like there's a ton of local security conferences, B-sides, that sort of thing. Like, and I understand that like socializing and that sort of thing is tough for a lot of the population in our community, but you got to do it, right? And you got to go out, you got to meet people and just talk to them about what you're interested in. And then usually what happens, I'm putting my manager hat on, is that it's all usually the opposite side, is that there's so much garbage out there, and a lot of them are like North Koreans too these days, but there's so many people out there, you just don't know who's good. You don't know like who's going to be a jerk, who you're going to get along with, who's going to be able to like actually follow through and task and get these things done. So like there's 2 problems there. And like the answer for the longest I've heard is just networking. And that's been the way it is. Like every major job I've gotten is because I've gone through this process. Like if you're in college, it's really great because companies are coming in, there's like hiring fairs and career fairs. They want to hire you. They want to bring you in. But like once you get out into the world, especially if like you're in a more rural area that's not in a metropolis like Toronto, it's a little bit harder to get involved there. And so then you have to get on your Discord game and start to be good at Twitter and or X and that sort of thing now.
Well, to add to what you're saying, first and foremost, the introvert kind of being quiet, not having the comfort to be able to speak, I would say first and foremost, there's places like Toastmasters where they help you with public speaking. That's an amazing place to start out. I started out there where they teach you like in a small group, comfortable group of how to public speak and how to communicate and get rid of the ahs and hums and and the stuttering things that you have and feel more comfortable so you can feel confident presenting in a calm way. The next thing, totally agree with you. You got to network. You got to network. Now, the one caveat I would say, and again, owning my own business, being a director, doing that, start off in what's about them. Like, hi, Brandon, how you doing? Tell me a little bit about the role that you got. I would like to learn more about what you do. What about your company? Like, really dive deep into them first, because there's a psychology aspect that's called reciprocity. as much as I talk about Danny, there's going to be a point where he's going to turn around and go, okay, well, Brendan, I know nothing about you. Tell me a little bit about you. What are you looking for? And that's your time to shine. Right. But if I come into Danny and go, hey, Danny, my name's Brandon. I'm looking for that security job that you have. I think I'd be a great candidate. Danny kind of goes, whoa, time out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if you're the right fit. You're coming on kind of strong. Like, let's kind of like talk a little bit and let's see kind of where you're at. And that's where I found my success was. And again, if anyone's heard my story, the way I broke into cybersecurity was I started the stream interviewing subject matter experts because I had a college diploma in IT. I had no experience in cybersecurity. I had a Security Plus certification. No one was looking at me. So I started to talk to experts, asking them questions. Well, what would you do differently? And how would you break into the industry? And what were some things like that? What's your top 5 things you would do differently and you would do today? And I gleaned that information to people who are starting to say, hey, you know how to talk. You know a little bit about cybersecurity. You feel comfortable in the industry. You're talking to leading experts that we kind of recognize that have books and all that. So Brandon, come in. And my first job was sales, right? Cybersecurity sales, because they said you could talk, you understand the products and services, you can learn them, you can get in front of people and talk, go. And that was my breaking point where I broke into the industry and got in and started to learn and kind of grow. So
Yep.
I give that to the people that are watching, the questions they're asking about how to do that. You got to find your voice. You got to find, like you were talking about, how to connect, not just network, but really connect to someone on a relationship level and build that rapport, have that conversation comfortably. And then here's a sales technique, ABC, close to something.
Mm-hmm.
Another call, sending your resume in a follow-up meeting, something close to something. Don't say, thank you so much for your time and walk away.
Yeah.
And I've seen that. I've seen that in networking meetup groups where someone's having a great conversation. You can kind of see the hiring manager or whatever kind of interested, and the person goes, thank you, and walks away.
Yeah.
And the guy goes to me, like I've talked to him, and go, I guess they weren't interested. I'm not sure. Like,
Yeah.
I have no contact information, no nothing, but they just talked to me for like 15 minutes and that was it. Okay.
Yeah. We're also gifted in this industry with a lot of people that are just like, you have natural genetic social awkwardness, without going too deep into that. But like a lot of that's really hard to get over too. But I think that like one of the things is like, if this is your passion and you're truly interested in it, lead with that. Like if you're like, maybe not the hiring manager at a career fair, that's probably not the right person to nerd out with. But if they brought, an engineer that's there to help interview, it's like, we're all in this because we love it. Right. We love that. And like, for me, when I look for people, I'm looking for passion. I'm looking for interest. I'm looking for somebody who's not going to get bored and go on to something else and get there. So yeah, that's right. Like learning how to speak to people is like, that was the difficult part.
Yeah. Cause the technology I found for myself, you can sit alone and hack away at it for hours. And there's, and I know back in my day, there was not much forums and news groups and stuff like that. You had to really do digging. Now, I mean, ChatGPT, Google, whatever, you can do numerous amounts of search, Reddit, find information. But I know back in the day, like you'd spend days trying to figure out a problem. Now it's hours, right? Like, okay, I had this error message, it's not working, it's not syncing. Someone somewhere and said, oh, I had that. You did it backwards. I know the white paper says do that, but you have to actually update, do that, reboot, put that in, do the patch, run the script, and then it works. Like, really? They just said just run the script and you're fine. No, you have to do these 4 other steps and now it works.
Yeah, that script worked 4 years ago on an older version of Sonos that's completely out of date and you can't patch anymore. But this one you gotta work at. You gotta earn it.
Now, one of the questions I know we were talking about, and this kind of stay in the line of the top of these people are asking the audience. So how do you push employees and students through dead ends, like failed analysis, lack of understanding?
Yeah, that's the tough part. Really, it comes down to a lot of personality defects, and on my side at least, is that there's a certain amount of not knowing when to quit.
Right.
And like, there's a certain, well, in this field too, like if you want like concrete answers with firm yes or no decisions, this is not the career for you.
Yeah.
If you want satisfaction from having like firm authoritative answers and that sort of thing, like, I don't know, go do plumbing or something, because this isn't it, right? There are sometimes you're just going to get stuck and there's nothing you can do. There's nothing. Like, maybe you'll have an insight or that sort of thing, but you're just going to get stuck. And so, it's how you deal with that being stuck, right? How do you make the determination, oh, it's worth my time to put more effort into this and think about it a different way. Like, personally, in my brain, I have trouble letting go of puzzles. So like, it's just like, I just keep nattering at it until I find a solution, or I go through all the different contortions and that sort of thing until I get it. But you are going to hit a wall.
Now, do you find that's a trait for a lot of people in the technical field, IT and security?
Yeah,
They just can't let it go.
I think it's certainly with my group of friends that I've self-selected, it's very, very common. But for other people, it's that's something that's like, you can't really train it either. That's the thing. But I mean, so, and actually, this isn't just unique to our field either. So like, I had a teacher that actually taught me how to deal with my abject confusion and terror of the unknown, which is that he would give these, like, it was an algorithms professor in college, and he would give these like crazy assignments where you would have to do a lot of interpretation and dancing around it and like figuring out what's going on. But like, eventually you could get there. But like, part of the process that he was trying to teach us wasn't like just solving the problem. Right now, you just paste it into ChatGPT and it'll dump out the answer and everything's great. You go on with your life.
Right.
But like, back then it was like, no, like, you get a week to do this homework. You need to start it tonight. Like, look at the problem, be like, holy, like, what's going on with this thing? And be like, let your brain think about it. And then the next day, come back to it. Because like, we've all been on that thing where we've been slamming on a problem for like 8-10 hours, trying to get it done. There's a deadline and that sort of thing. And then like, you take a break, like you go have lunch, or, you go to sleep, and then you wake up in the morning, sit at the computer and like, type it out. Right. And then it's answered. So like, you have to have that process going. So as much time as you can build in to help solve those problems, once you hit to those walls, that's the big thing.
Right. Now, I bring that up is because my wife tells me I'm a dog with a bone, right?
I get that too. Yeah.
Right. So there's times where I know for myself, I'm sitting here in my office on my desk. It's 4:00 in the morning. And she's like, do you know, like, you should have gone to bed like hours ago. I'm like, oh no, it's like 10 o'clock. She's like, no, it's 4:00 in the morning. What are you working on? Right. And I'm just so involved of troubleshooting something that's not working that, like, and that's why I said, do you think it's a trait? And I think it is. Like, some of the people that I know is that you get immersed in it, you try to figure it out, and then you move the needle a little bit forward, and then something breaks, and then you move it a little bit, and you keep doing it, and troubleshooting, and eventually hours go by. But you don't want to say, okay, like, I know some people that I know, right, and they come to me for support. I'm sure you have those too, where they go, someone else can do it, and they just throw over the fence, right? And they're like, Brandon will figure it out. Like, here, just tell him, and then they go off and live their lives, and everything's great. Where now I have it in 4:00 in the morning with their problem and trying to figure it out, right? So I just didn't know if you kind of saw that, because I see that for myself. Guys that are in the technical side have a little bit of that trait, because I think it is something you are passionate about too. Like, and I mean you as everyone, not just Danny, but we're passionate about to figure it out. Like, to us, it's like, it's not something that is necessarily a bad thing, a negative thing. It's a curious thing that we want to figure that out. We want to solve. It's a puzzle for us. Yeah. We want to see, we come to that, full puzzle. And I use that analogy with my mother-in-law, was that it's like doing a puzzle, those puzzles that used to kind of lay all the pieces, you put them all together. Well, say you're in the last like 4 pieces, but there's 3 pieces left of the box. You're trying to find that one piece is now under the couch, in the cushions. Well, you're just flipping the house upside down. Well, that's how my mind works with technology. My mind's trying to flip everything upside down, trying to find that one piece that's going to put everything together.
Oh yeah. Yeah. This was captured really well in a movie called The Accountant with Ben
Affleck. Yep.
Have you ever seen that?
With Ben Affleck. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, he's a forensics accountant person, which is like, spiritually related to us.
Yep.
and like he's getting there and he's getting a little bit too deep and getting too many answers, and they're like, okay, why don't you stop? And he's like, but I'm not finished. And
Right.
like it's this huge thing and like a mental breakdown and that sort of thing. It's exactly like, yeah. And then like that dog with a bone, those words have been uttered in my house multiple times. Is it said, I just can't put it down. Like, it doesn't matter if it's 4 a.m. Like, if I stop working on the problem, I'm just going to go lie awake in bed thinking about the problem. So it's like, you got to do it.
So have you found any way for yourself to kind of reduce that, drive? Any techniques, any strategies?
Yeah. I don't know. Like this is like, I've tried a lot of stuff and that sort of thing, but mostly what I've done is I've just gotten to understand the natural process that I need for it. Like, it's like you can go to a psychiatrist and they'll talk you about ways to be less doing about this and that sort of thing, and then put you through a battery. Like, I don't think that there's really a good way to get around that. Like, a lot of it's just like personal discipline, and for a lot of us, but for me, this is like one of those little ticks that has actually been very good in my career. So I don't try to control it too much. Mostly what I have to do is I have to control, like, the only way that I can control it is when I go in. Right. So if I see a new project, you probably see a few of them behind me, but if I see a new project that I'm like, oh, that looks really interesting, it's like, I cannot touch it. I cannot get into it. And there's just some certain things that I can't get into, because like, as soon as I go into it, it's like, it's all over. It'll come out 60 days later.
Right.
3 years later, the Ph.D. or something like that. It's like stuff like that. It gets in. So like, controlling the entry is my only way of doing it.
So now I'll say this: if it's serving you and you can do it in a healthy way, 100% do it. One thing I found for myself, which was great, was if I find it's unhealthy, where I'm not sleeping, I'm not eating, I'm going hours, not drinking like water, like not taking care of myself, one of the things that I have done is I stop and I go work out.
Yeah.
I work out and exert some of that energy, right? Because a lot of it is just pent up, just focus and all that. And I need to work out hard, push-ups, jumping jacks, go do some weights and do that for like half an hour. And then I feel like I'm just kind of physically tired. So then I can go now and sleep, right? And then go rest and then wake up, and then I'll be more refreshed and now I'm a clearer mind, right?
Oh yeah.
Where before I would just work through it because, okay, well, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. I got 2 hours. I start working, at 6:37. Why am I going to sleep? And then I can't think, right? I can't think through the day. I'm not, completely cognitive there. So what I recommend, if anyone's finding that, there's meditation, all that. I find sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I find energy exertion helps me to kind of settle down. And they call it like a parasympathetic, sympathetic. When you're in a sympathetic state and you're all stressed and wound up, to help your body unwind and get that kind of anxiousness and stress out of your body, to work out, then you can kind of breathe and relax. Your body starts to kind of normalize, and then you can sleep, right? So, and then get back to it the next morning. So I found for me that helped, because I did talk to therapists and all that, and they said, okay, well, think about a different way. Think about like, what was it? I remember it was Dane Cook, like a swan. Think about a swan, right? And I'm like, yeah, I'm now thinking about the swan doing troubleshooting my keyboard issue, and then going through and then writing script and code. Now the swan's doing, now I have to troubleshoot because they did it wrong. Now I'm stressed about the swan. Like, and they're like, okay, hold on, that's not working out. Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of fundamental misunderstandings of this mindset, but like here in the U.S., I don't know if this is like the Canadian medical system yet, but like here in the U.S., where everybody's on the spectrum now.
Oh God, yeah.
And that has been, and it's like getting tested for that. Like a lot of my friends, like a lot of the people with that like energy and drive and that sort of thing, turns out that there was a reason for that.
Right.
And it was, being diagnosed. So, and that's a great way to like just understand yourself and that sort of thing. So if you suspect that, or you're having those sorts of problems, yeah, talk to somebody and look at a diagnosis for, ADHD and autism. It's not like debilitating or anything like that. It's definitely helpful knowing that. And like a lot of times you just can't fight yourself, right? Like once you realize that this is how I operate, go for it.
Here's my thing on that side is, say you get diagnosed. first go to healthy ways to work through it before going to medication. Because anytime you go to prescriptions or things like that, now if you do need it, I mean, I understand, but a lot of times just read the labels and understand what they call the black book value of the medication, because sometimes there's side effects. And the worst thing that I've seen this in my background, because I used to be a holistic lifestyle coach and worked at a clinic, is that one medication starts to create another issue, which then you need another medication, which then creates another issue, which creates another medication. Now you have a pharmacy in your bathroom of 10 or 15 medications you need to take, right? Versus if it was diet, sleep, exercise, get out in the sun, hydration, just core factors would help you kind of stabilize and help you balance that out, is a lot more healthier than, having to take certain medication. Now, and I say this, some people do need it, and I completely understand. And I'm not saying don't do it if you need it, but I'm saying if you have mild or lower, grade, try the healthier approach first before you start going to medication right directly. Right? Because again, like I've seen it. Like when I first got into holistic lifestyle coaching, I had one client that came in. She came in with 13 medications. I'm like, oh my god! Like, are you like? Have you seen your doctor? Have you gone through blood? And she's like, out of the history, my 15-year history, the doctors wouldn't be prescribing it. And I'm like, my god, like heart disease, liver, this, and just your cholesterol. And you're like, wow, like, and she goes, I'm coming to you because I need to lose weight and I need to do that. And so we worked with her doctor. We got her down to 2 medications over 18 months, but it took some time working with her doctors. But my point being is there's all different ways of doing it. And like you said, if you get diagnosed, you're on the spectrum, 100%, it's great to understand it. Now is what to do.
Yeah, can make a big difference, but I agree. I didn't want to listen to the diet and exercise thing, but that like started to help turn around things. But yeah, I mean, don't throw anything away, or any tools or that sort of thing. That's my advice, is just keep an open mind about it.
Now, going back to the original conversation, now let's talk a little bit about reverse engineering. And I really wanted to get in there because I know there's some people that are potentially going to be looking at that. When you're looking, we talked about incident response, reverse engineering. When would I use it? When would I use reverse engineering?
Okay, so we were talking about the incident response process.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you've noticed something that's there. Typically, what would happen is that there's either going to be 2 approaches now. It's either going to be like a more living off the land, holistic, like using the tools that are there,
right.
The tools that are built into a Windows or a Linux operating system to accomplish your goals. Or there's going to be a piece of malware. We always referred to it as like an implant or something like that. Something to give them that initial beachhead into your network that allows them to like move around more easily.
Right.
And really it follows 2 things. So like these days, if you have EDR, usually you get living off the land based hacks and exploits. That's how they get into your system. It's because they're super hard to detect.
Right.
If you don't have EDR, that's when you start to get the implant. And that's usually like the piece of malware. And that's either like a small little thing that they can upload very quickly, get it. And then the goal is basically to get able to write commands or execute things on your network anytime that they want.
Right.
So it'll have callbacks, all the infrastructure. It'll have callbacks, communication, maybe a little proxying so that they can explore your network like a normal user, and that sort of thing. But they tend to be pretty small.
Right.
And then usually so being able to understand that initial thing is really helpful, because a lot of people tend to focus on, oh, I've got this thing, I need to get it off my network. Right. But like they don't see that like somebody put that on there. Right. And your ability to find out who put that on there is dependent upon a lot of things, but mostly it's dependent upon them making mistakes. And so to be able to do that, you got to catch it as soon as possible, be able to watch what they're doing, see the tools that they're using, and understand the limitations of how annoying it is. Because like at the end of the day, the thing that everybody forgets is that there's a person that is typing these things. We haven't gotten to Skynet taking over things yet that I know of, but there's always a person on the other end who's always going to be severely irritated that the developer hasn't fixed the bug in their little program that they're using to hack into your network.
Right.
Or maybe they are the developer and they, that sort of thing. There's always little clues about that. And like those initial access initial access things, that's going to lead you to a little bit better compromise that gets there. But then after that, once the initial access is there, so let's take the ransomware scenario.
Mhm.
They break in, they escalate. The goal is to get your administrative servers so that they can get access to your financials, so that they can figure out how to size your ransom, and then they got to get their stuff everywhere so that they can encrypt it. And so
Right.
that is usually another program, so different from the initial access,
Mhm.
that's either delivered through that command and control or installed separately. And so that's another little bit of reverse engineering. And so
Right.
in that situation where it's useful and where we got a lot of it was identifying the group, figuring out who was running it, and then also a lot of them were making mistakes. So just as a quick side, I spent a lot of time chasing this ransomware group, Beyond Leon,
Okay.
who's gone through rebranding recently. But anyway, that's a different talk. But what they would do is they had their initial access program, which was very small. It was a Go program. Looked like it was coded over a 12-pack on a Friday night.
Right.
But it worked, right? So that's how they got in, and then they would expand out, and then they put their ransom software. They called it an encryptor. It was also written in Go. This one looked like it had a case of beer and like 2 weekends, but it was like that similar level. But it had so many like encryptions and obfuscations built onto that you couldn't really figure it out. But what they would do is it was like 2 of those situations. And so in the case of the initial access, knowing where it was, knowing where they contacted back to, figuring out like the IP addresses that they were communicating to, not only the ones that we'd seen, but also the ones that were backed up inside of it. So a lot of times there'll be hard-coded IP addresses, or there'll be like an algorithm that generates a predictable random domain name
Right.
that the attacker has to register.
Right.
And so you can get that. And so what we've done in a lot of those cases is like, as a reverse engineer, I'll say, okay, you need to block this IP address, and then you need to block all 400 of these next iterations of it that it's going to go to.
Right.
And then that just cuts it off. And so those are the types of questions that you can answer quickly.
So now going back to it, anyone's watching this. So you look at the attack methodology. So how they get in the network and how they get into the environment, how they move laterally, and the tools that they use and the scripting they use in that program. The reverse engineering is taking the one side and going back through it to see how it actually communicates back to the threat actor, all the way through those hops, all the way through the different, application scripting, access points, permission escalations, things along that line. So you're taking that and you're going through it step by step to understand that whole executable or attack vector, how they're using it, so you can better understand not only how it's used, but how to also protect yourself. Like you talked about, do you go and start blocking certain, IP addresses and ports and things along that line? Do you now go to block certain domain names? Do you have an open access point that you didn't know that they got into, but now because you've traced that back, you saw that's where they came from and how they got in? Do you have a problem? It's because it's social, it's a phishing campaign. They got through a phishing campaign. Now you trace that back from an IP address to a user ID to an email account to and you've gone through that. So really drawing that back on the reverse engineering so people understand this is that really that's what you're doing. Where if you're talking about instant response, a lot of times it's getting your SOC, your threat hunters, things like that to kind of give you brief information to contain it quickly.
Right.
Block that IP address, stop that. There's an endpoint, cut off the network connection, and don't turn off the system. Everyone knows that. Just want to keep that because you want to keep the actual, the ephemeral memory that you can actually pull any artifacts or anything from. But you kind of do that, but you contain it quickly.
Yes.
But what you're doing is you go more deeper into that layer of the threat hunting investigation to find out more.
Yeah, I think I'll stop you there because there's a couple of little bits of nuance, right? A lot of people think reverse engineering is just like you're going to pull up a thing that's going to pull up a lot of assembly code, and it's going to be like beautiful mind, Rain Man type situation where you communicate with the code and then be like, this is the answer.
Right.
And that is the thing.
You're Neo from the Matrix. You can just talk to it, right?
Right. I wish I could download, how to do Kung Fu in my head with a button. That would be awesome. But yeah, you got me distracted there. Anyway, like a lot of it is like in the incident response thing, you don't have time to go in and read line by line each thing of code. And even then, like one of the big problems in reverse engineering is like, where do you start looking?
Right.
You know, you start looking at the start. Okay, there's a whole bunch of boilerplate and obfuscations and stuff like that that are in your way, and you're going to get through that. But really, like if you can get through that, you know, you might as well write a product to do it, because it's like you've got subject matter knowledge that's too big for this. What you need are the quick answers. And so that's where a lot of these like sandboxes come in. And so you hear this called dynamic analysis in reverse engineering,
Right.
which is where you just do this. You just let the program run. So in the case of like, if I'm looking at commercial software or a video game or whatever, I'm going to see how it runs. I'm going to see how it verifies it. I'm going to see what happens when I don't have, well, back in dating myself in the 90s, but what happens if I don't have the disk in the drive? How does it fail? Right. What are the little error messages that pop up? Does it leave logs anywhere? Right? None of that is like looking at code. That's just like running it and then seeing what happens.
Right.
So being able to like instrument that and see like what files it's writing, what registry things it's modifying. If it's talking out on the network, pull that out and like get that. So like what you do is you come in with all of this pre-done information. You can say like this executable talks out on the network. It reads from the registry. It writes itself to this location. And then when you go to look at the code and you have to go in at the little micro level, you have something to aim you. Be like, oh, I'm interested in figuring out how they do network communication. So you can go in and trace all the network stuff there, and that limits you, right? Because this is this kind of a time game that you're playing. Is like, how much time do you have to respond to this to make the analysis actually worthwhile?
Right.
So like, the tools start out from very simple, probably simpler than you're used to using, like sites like PolySwarm or AnyRun or those sorts of sandboxes that are there. If you're good at setting things up yourself, like Cape Sandbox is a good one, but it tells you what it does before it tells you like what's inside of it. And that's always like when I'm teaching reverse engineering, it's like, okay, let's figure out the right questions to ask first.
Right. Well, I saw that because one of the companies I worked with, we had a forensics team, right? Digital forensics team that basically would go through. And I mean, it would take them sometimes to get a forensics report 30 to 60 days, right? But they were doing a lot of things that you're talking about, right? The analysis of the logs and trying to find out what went where, like what IP address came from external, what time and date did that, and then what happened at that time and date. And they're going through step by step, drawing out a hierarchy of the logs of, a time frame of how things happen, and then reporting on it at this date and time, and this date and time, and this date and time, and this date and time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the key thing that like I train, and I say this in all through, like I teach a full semester long course on this, is like, figure out what you want to do first. It's not like come in with the sample and it's like, tell me everything that it does. It's like, no, that's going to be a waste of your time. It's like, no, give me a list of IP addresses to block or signals that I can find in my SIM logs to be able to get this. Those are the types of answers that you got to get from like an incident response thing. And then like what you're talking about with your forensics team, that is also a side of reverse engineering, but that typically involves more lawyers. And so you're usually trying to prove cases that way.
Right.
Is where it goes there. And that's fine too, but almost a different set of skills.
Yeah. 100%. Right. And then you have kind of the hybrid of both, where you, like you said, you got the technical team that's actually doing the work. And then, I mean, being an incident response lead and manager, you're kind of going through that. But then you have to review it with counsel to see what can be said and or written in a report. Now, there's a lot of verbal stuff that's underprivileged you can talk about. But other than that, I mean, you can't have it in written documents that can be discoverable later. So 100%. Now, talking about reverse engineering, I know sometimes it's often seen as the dark art. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talk about how I got into this, which was, pirating video games,
that
sort of thing. That's always been part of it. But a lot of this is like an area of confusion that I still haven't gotten, is that like, why is it considered a dark art? Why is learning about hacking and how people do this, why was that considered a dark art? I think a lot of that's changed now, but it still very much has that stigma. So, I mean, back in the day, the reason why it was a dark art is that nobody wrote anything down.
Right.
Not many people were doing it and that sort of thing. So like when you did get any information, it tended to come through things like frac. And it was like usually watching Tim Newsham do magic with the GDB debugger, with his return to libc stuff. And you're just like, how did he get to that? Like, how did he get from the start of the problem to like where he is right now? And there's a lot of stuff in there that's like just basic stuff. It's like, how do you look at assembly? Like, which assembly do I learn?
Right.
Like, and then there's a lot of other stuff, which is like understanding how people write software that you have to get into as well. So it's a pretty big step there.
Yeah, I think on my side, from what I see, is like when you talk about hackers, right? There's this the icon of who that is. It's a guy in a dark hood, bright keyboard, dark room, hacking away at something, right? But we know as professionals that's not the case, right? There's professional penetration testers, right, that go through and help organizations find gaps in their environment that they can start to now plug and remediate, so threat actors can't get in. So I think over time and distance, more professionals are seeing that. I think like I said, there's still, don't get me wrong, like, and you brought this up earlier, there's still the dark side of the world, right? Like, there's certain streets that in any city you just don't go down at night. Well, the same thing with the internet. There's certain places where you should not go in the internet, like the dark web, and if you don't know the sites or not, you shouldn't probably go there because there's going to be things you shouldn't be seeing, right?
Yeah.
No different. Like I'll use an example, which I brought up as an example of something that broke in moderation, was the Charlie Kirk assassination. I know moderators that moderate like Facebook and X and all that, and they're moderating that no, death or murder or anything it should be shown online. Right? They go through hundreds, if not thousands, of posts, videos, content to stop that. My point to them was like, well, then why wasn't that blocked? Why wasn't that taken down? Why did that go viral and not be stopped? Right? And I said, and my point was, there's just an example of what you don't know and you don't see, right? Because these are a lot of moderators that are going through and stopping that content. Where I said, like, I know, and I've talked to people. I was one year I was down in Ottawa, in the capital of Ontario, and I bumped into a police chief that I just met at a coffee shop. I told him I was in IT. He said, hey, do you want to come to this event? We're having a private event. He had a private event where they were talking about cybersecurity and child trafficking and trafficking of women. And it opened up the dark side of the internet for me. It was just like, oh, by the way, you can go to this site, and they show this and child pornography, and they're going. I'm like, whoa, hold on. What do you mean? They're like, yeah, this is easily available. Right? You just got to know where to look. I'm like, oh my God. And he goes, yeah, a lot of this stuff is through moderators are blocked. But if you go on the dark web and you use Onion and going to get on there, you can find them, but it's out there, but just not what most people know. And I think that's the dark side that we kind of see. And the professionals sometimes get caught in that. Oh, you're a pen tester, you're a hacker. Oh, no, I'm not that dark side. I'm helping you. I'm a professional that's like, a locksmith. I'm going to help you secure your building. I'm not someone that's going to go and break into your building. And now with proper contracts, and I want to put this out there, proper contracts, if you're going to be a pen tester, make sure you have rules of engagement, make sure you have a contract written down. So if you ever want to understand or jump into pen testing, make sure you talk to someone before you even start. Hey, I'm a pen tester, I'm just going to go do it. Go talk to someone that's a pen tester that's doing it professionally for years. Talk to them about their contracts and what they do before they engage. Right? Yeah. Just don't go run out and go do it.
Well, I mean, you can run out and go do it, but you should set up your own stuff and do it there. That's the big thing. Don't do free penetration testing for other companies. Like, charge them for that.
Well, that's the contract. I have had people that I've known growing up will go, oh, I did it, and then all of a sudden I got a knock on the door, and then this one was in Canada. It was RCMP going, we want to speak to, I'll call him John Doe. We want to speak to John Doe because he just illegally hacked into a company. He was like, oh, I'm just testing their security. No, that's not how it works. You didn't have any permission to do that. That's illegal.
Yeah. There's also a conversation to be had about not getting caught, but that's probably not RCMP. Like, I have a bunch of respect for those guys, by the way. That's
well, and that's why I want to put out people are learning here to do it properly, right?
right. Well, and I think that like we're in a time where you can learn it properly.
Yeah.
Like the cost to set up a VM with a Windows server or whatever is not there, and like there's Kali Linux and stuff like that. So like as you're going through this, just even on YouTube, there's great learning paths that you can go down now that are almost as good or better than like the academic style or even the black hat style.
100%.
What you miss is like being able to ask the person questions.
Yeah.
And like for me, it was always like dumb questions, like how do I operate this debugger? Why are you able to do this? It's like, oh, you need this plugin.
Right.
Like, oh, okay. So it was little things like that.
But
I mean, the dark web side of it, unfortunately, that is a side of it too. So I typically tend to stay in ransomware land, which is a little bit more contained. But you look at some of more like illicit content places, and a lot of them have some really good operational security documents and stuff like that. So like, I mean, that's stuff that you can learn from. Maybe not consume the content that they're teaching you how to get, but like all of the things that they're teaching you, like how to get onto how to like avoid being detected. Not only does that protect you for whatever you're doing, but it also makes it so that when you're looking for those people, you're like, oh, they probably use this VPN provider, or they're using a Tor exit node to try and come at me, and that sort of thing. So you have an understanding of how these tools work and how the adversary is doing their job and the annoyances that they're getting.
For sure. 100%. Now we're coming up at 2:00. Website polyswarm.io. That now, if anyone has any questions or want to reach out, best way to get a hold of Danny is through LinkedIn. So I'll post his LinkedIn URL here. So I'll give you guys a few seconds to write that out. Danny, any last thoughts?
Just stay curious. We talked a little bit about the, coming up against walls and moving past them and stuff like that. But, another big component also is like, do I belong in this field, and the imposter syndrome and stuff like that. It was like, after dealing with all that, just work through it. Just keep going, stick with your passion. If this is, hopefully this is fun to you. That's typically who I try to focus and that sort of thing, but just find something that's fun. And if you don't like it, then, consider your life choices, I guess is my.
Well, you can also pivot. Like there's so much you can do in security, right?
Yeah.
There's compliance, there's regulatory, there's instant response, there's reverse engineering, there's SOC, there's infrastructure. Like, I mean, it's endless of what you can do in security, right? You can be a quality assurance person and test security products, right? There's so many things you can do, right? So it's a big field.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Danny.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me. It was a good conversation.
Okay, I'm going to jump out. Give me a second here. So, I mean, this was a great conversation, as you can tell, with Danny and myself. I mean, we covered a lot of great information. Again, if you guys want to get a hold of Danny and you want to, reach out to him, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Danny's been a great resource for a couple of my colleagues and friends and people they've had conversations. So when I heard that Danny wanted to come out and do the stream, I was so excited to have these conversations, because it's good to have a lot of people in your network that know different things, because you can't know all. You can't know everything. And having subject matter experts in different areas that you can pull from and have conversations only makes you better. It only makes you better in the field. And you might pivot. You might, like we were talking about, you might pivot into that area, or you might just keep them as a resource that, hey, I have this question. This is coming up. Can we collaborate? Can you help me out? And then vice versa. They might have something on their side where they're like, oh, I have something. And for me, it's like advisory or whatever. Danny might come, hey, I have something on the advisory side. It's not really my expertise. They're asking for someone to come in. Can you come in and help me here? Because I'm working on one side, you can work on the other. So a lot of this, when you're networking, we talked about earlier, and collaborating, having a good, strong network of professionals and people that you trust really helps you grow your career. And on top of that, as you do that, opportunities come up for you. Different things. We're talking to people. Danny has a network maybe of 500 people plus. I have a network of a couple thousand plus. And all of a sudden Danny says, hey, I have a friend that's looking for something. I could say, hey, let me reach out to my network and see if it happens. And all of a sudden now people start building up opportunities. They start looking at different things, and it's just a strong community to build from. So really think about that as you're being in the cybersecurity field. It's really going to help you grow. Now, that's it for today's Daily Cyber. Hope you learned a lot. Don't forget, it's the effort of being in the field. Yes, there's going to be frustrations. There's going to be times you're going to want to like, oh, I'm done. Stick with it. It's a great career to be in. You can see all the great people I've interviewed and talked to. You're going to see more and more. So don't forget, software is hackable, being connected is vulnerable. I'll see you next Daily Cyber.